Greetings, all you YouTubers and my fellow geeks out there. Thank you for watching this Star Wars The Force Awakens teaser analysis. The second teaser to this film just released a few days ago, and the internet has been ablaze ever since. And the first time I saw it, I knew there was just so much stuff going way too fast that I will literally have to watch it frame by frame to get all the goodies hidden inside. And I've discovered some pretty amazing gems that I'd like to share with you from both teasers. Now, I haven't watched any other analysis videos, so all the information is original. I just hope I found something that nobody else has noticed. I won't be going in order of the scenes as they appeared in the teasers, but instead I'll build on the original trilogy, things like what we still have, what's changed, then go into what's new. So let's get started. Obviously, this is set 30 years after Return of the Jedi, and of course we need to have the Millennium Falcon zooming into action. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on any design changes unless I feel that it actually affects the story in some way. But for the Falcon, as you can see from the rear view, it's pretty symmetrical except for the dark gray rectangle on the left or port side. If you remember in Jedi, Lando Calrissian piloted the Falcon into the second Death Star and then broke off the Falcon's circular sensor dish on his escape flight. So it would seem that Han has since upgraded the Falcon with this shorter rectangular dish to avoid this problem in the future. Now, although it obviously probably won't affect the story in Force Awakens at all, it is at least comforting to see how much attention to detail J.J. Abrams has already put into this, because honestly, when I first heard that he was going to direct, I was concerned. I wasn't one of those who absolutely hated Star Trek Into Darkness, but I felt that he was trying to pull too much from the original series and the original films, that he was not breaking new territory, and that it was just more like, hey, remember this? And so I was concerned. But this seems like a step in the right direction, and we'll see more evidences of Abrams' work as we continue to analyze these teasers. Now, if you have something like the Falcon in a new movie, you need to make sure that you do something new that the model couldn't do back in the 1980s with the original trilogy. And we certainly see that in the first teaser with the flip and roll at the end of it. But what's confirmed in this second teaser is that we will indeed see the Falcon flying and fighting in a planet's atmosphere, which we never got to see in the original trilogy, and I always felt was missing from the Falcon showcase. What troubles me about this scene, however, is that you see here is that the Falcon is being chased by a single TIE fighter, which shouldn't be a problem for the YT-1300, especially since we've seen the Falcon take out 4 TIE fighters in the original Star Wars film A New Hope, and then the only times the Falcon didn't actually fight but instead ran away was when it was either outgunned by Star Destroyers or it was in tight quarters and against the clock, like in Return of the Jedi. So why is it running away from this lone TIE fighter? My guess is that the Falcon is carrying some kind of important cargo, maybe a person of interest, and thus creating the need for flight over fight. Whatever the reason, the Falcon flees into the wreckage of this spaceship, which is interesting in itself. It doesn't look like the same ship in the opening scene of the second teaser, as there's no conning tower or command tower, and the Star Destroyer in the first scene definitely looks to be a standard everyday Star Destroyer with only 3 thrusters or rocket boosters or whatever they're called. While this monstrosity has at least 7 that are visible in this one shot. 7 thrusters, rocket boosters. Thereby creating the possibility that this is in fact a super Star Destroyer. Much like Darth Vader's flagship in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. But I'm doubting it's the same one, as Lucasfilms has stated that this desert planet is called Jakku, Jakku. Therefore, not being Tatooine, as everybody previously thought, or the Force Moon of Endor, where I think it was called the Executor, where Vader's flagship actually crashed into the Death Star during the Battle of Endor. Therefore, if it's not, this is Jakku in a completely different location from Endor or Tatooine. This definitely has to be an entirely different Super Star Destroyer, which is very interesting and something I definitely look forward to seeing more information about. Now, of course, you can't have a DeLorean without Dr. Emmett Brown, or the TARDIS without the Doctor. As such, we cannot have the Millennium Falcon without Han Solo and his trusty sidekick, Chewbacca. The background is the very clear and very familiar interior of the iconic light freighter. So what throws us viewers for a curveball is Han's line of, "Chewie, we're home." Home? Home? What do you mean home? What is home, Han? And why haven't you been there for who knows how long? Clearly, these are the answers that we will have to wait until December, or maybe until the next trailer or the one after that, to finally find out what are the answers. After all, look at Lucasfilms' cousin in the Disney family, Marvel. We knew well, like over a year ago, that Vision would be in the next Avengers film, but it took them forever to finally even show just the tiniest glimpse of the android in one of their trailers. So this, maybe we have to wait longer, we may have to wait shorter, but hopefully we get to find out what he means by home, whether it's the Millennium Falcon or wherever they're located with the Falcon. But they're definitely in the Falcon when he says this line, so it's kind of unnerving for me. But we already knew Han and Chewbacca were going to return, and it's therefore obvious that Leia will also be showing up. Though sadly we don't get to see her face in this shot, we can tell by the soft hands and wrists and the long fake nails that this is obviously a woman. I do admit that the hands do seem a bit too young to belong to Carrie Fisher, but it could just be that we don't regularly see her hands on television interviews or on YouTube. Or they simply just use some makeup magic for the shot. Excuse me. Or they had a body double, or in this case, just a hand double to substitute for the shot, or even just use special effects in post production. I mean, if ILM can make dinosaurs walk on a grassy field, certainly they can make a woman's hands seem youthful. But either way, I am convinced this is Leia herself, holding the lightsaber. And so hopefully we'll get to see her Jedi abilities this Christmas when the film comes out. But what's just as important as Leia receiving a lightsaber is the lightsaber that she's being given. That specific lightsaber was forged by none other than Anakin Skywalker himself, and then passed down to his son Luke, who lost it with his severed right hand to the bottom of Cloud City on Bespin in the film Empire Strikes Back. Here's another angle. Again, JJ references back to the original trilogy and answers a burning question that has been asked for the past 35 years of what happened to that lightsaber. Now, the Expanded Universe books did have an answer, but with Disney completely erasing all that history and legend, we need a new answer to the Skywalker lightsaber question. What happened to it? Where'd it go? Who picked it up? And did it survive? And clearly it did. And it definitely seems like we'll get more of those questions answered. Aside from Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, what's interesting to note is the individual handing Leia the lightsaber. She or he, I'm going to go with she, seems to be a never-before-seen alien species with orange skin, black fingernails, and a cat-like face with chameleon-like eyes. Here's the next frame. this, as you can see in the right corner, this new alien may indicate that the lightsaber was recovered somewhere other than Cloud City, as it would more likely have been collected by the Ugnaughts if it was indeed collected directly there. Well, retrieved there from Leia. But you can't have all these Skywalker family ties without bringing in the most famous Skywalker of all, Luke. But I need to set something up first before I get to my theory and his involvement in with it. And to do that, I need to first talk about this guy, Poe Dameron. Dameron. However you pronounce his last name. Played by I can't speak today. Played by Oscar Isaacs, was shown in the first teaser and is obviously taking over the storytelling role of Wedge Antilles from the original trilogy into this new generation of galactic saviors. Obviously, Dameron, I'm going to say Dameron. Obviously, Dameron pilots the new X-Wing fighter, as you can see from this shot. Better than the first teaser, the X-Wings have undergone some significant changes while still being X-Wings. Now, earlier I said that I wouldn't really go into design changes unless it was actually affected to the story. Well, this is exactly what I was talking about. Remember the original X-Wings from the original trilogy? They had circular engines with circular blasters and straight wings, while, as you can see here, these new ones have instead a semicircular style engines with rectangular blasters and crooked or multi-leveled wings, however you would describe that. Either way, not straight, flat wings as was in the original X-Wings. Now compare the X-Wings in this shot to this one. Yes, I'm finally to the first shot of the teaser. We have a land speeder riding along, possibly Daisy Ridley's Rey, as we see her in the first teaser, zooming between a crashed and damaged Star Destroyer in the background and a solitary wrecked X-Wing fighter in the foreground, while we listen to the John Williams' Binary Sunset from A New Hope. Yes, for those of you who are wondering, I cried watching this shot out of pure nerdgasm. The obvious question is, what caused the Star Destroyer to crash? Yet the answer that it was in a battle isn't quite as obvious as you might think. If this Star Destroyer was brought down in a major battle, then there would have been several wrecked and damaged X-Wings and TIE Fighters scattered throughout the dunes, but all we see is this one lone X-Wing. The damage seen on the destroyer seems to be strictly from battle damage and not rotting over time or scavenging, which would suggest that the crash was relatively recent, but there's something strange about that X-Wing. It's not the same type flown by Dameron, but a Battle of Endor or Battle of Yavin era fighter. You don't believe me? There. You can clearly see the circular engines and blasters with the straight wings, thereby begging the question, whose X-Wing is this? And why is it the only starfighter out here? That, my dear viewer, is what I have theorized concerning none other than Luke Skywalker. Now, I may be grasping at straws here, but please consider my theory for just a moment. We have Luke's narration about the Force being strong in his family. His father has it, he has it, his sister has it, and then he adds, you have that power too. So obviously he is revealing to somebody, but we don't know who, that they are Force sensitive. Since he's referring to his family, this could be a relative that Luke is talking to, but I believe that he's just referring to his family as a way of showing his credentials, demonstrating that if anyone in the galaxy is a so-called expert on the Force, it's going to be Luke. If I'm right, then Luke has found somebody else who is strong in the Force and is trying to recruit him or her as his Padawan. While on the search, he may have crashed because, as we see here, Luke and R2-D2 seem to be in an isolated location, possibly a desert, looking into a fire. R2 seems to have taken some battle scorching right above his leg or arm joint. And the way that Luke gently touches his old friend seems to suggest that they have just survived a very harrowing ordeal. I would theorize that the crashed old-style X-Wing fighter we saw in the first shot is actually Luke's, leaving Luke and R2-D2 stranded here on Jakku. But I just want to touch on one thing in the shot before I carry on with my theory, and that is to point out Luke's hand. As mentioned earlier, Darth Vader cut off Luke's hand at Cloud City on Bespin in Empire Strikes Back, and Luke got a prosthetic hand that still looks like human skin, and he was able to still feel and everything with it. But as shown here, Luke's hand is essentially naked. It doesn't have the synthetic skin covering that we saw in both the end of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So, thus begging the question, what happened to the skin covering? But getting back to my theory, we have what's probably, most likely, in my mind, Luke's crashed X-Wing and the crashed Star Destroyer. Now, the first face that we have seen from The Force Awakens, as far as obviously the teasers were concerned, was indeed Stormtrooper Finn, as Lucasfilm has named him, played by John Boyega. I believe that Finn is a Force sensitive who has been a Stormtrooper for some time, but with the apparent recent awakening of the Force, he's just now discovering his abilities. After all, this is called The Force Awakens, so apparently it's been asleep, and now something's happening that people are discovering that they are indeed Force sensitive. Awakening of the Force on both the dark side and the light, as Andy Serkis's narration revealed in the first trailer. I think, going back to my theory, I think that Luke may have sensed a disturbance of the Force and followed it to Finn, who is probably serving on a Star Destroyer, obviously as a Stormtrooper, as the background in this shot seems to follow the Imperial style architecture. I definitely believe he was probably stationed on such a Star Destroyer. Luke probably flew his X-Wing to the outside of said Star Destroyer and communicated with Finn through the Force, which would certainly explain his evident level of anxiety between the new abilities, the new senses, and this crazy old guy talking to you in your head. Not to mention the realization that you're working for the bad guys. I mean, that's got to be pretty anxious and nerve-wracking, if anything is. But as always, when a good guy figures out that they're working for the wrong side, the natural course of action is to defect. Now, this shot in the trailer, you really need to slow down to a frame-by-frame viewing to even have a prayer of understanding what is going on. Obviously, this is an Imperial installation with the TIE fighters on the wall on the left side, suggesting that this is, in fact, a hangar bay. Between the explosions, blaster bolts, and smoke, we can see that the TIE fighter on the right is firing on the unmanned TIEs on the left wall, the unmanned TIE fighters on the left wall, with the Stormtroopers on the floor firing back at the TIE fighter on the right. I do believe that it is in fact Finn who is flying this rogue TIE fighter, and this is his defection / escape from the Empire scene. If you look at the mid-right section of the background, you'll see a star field, suggesting that this attack is occurring on a Star Destroyer while they're in space, which I would dare to speculate is the exact same Star Destroyer that we see crashed on Jakku. I also suspect that the reason only the Star Destroyer and the older model X-Wing is seen crash together on a Jakku is that maybe Jedi Master Luke Skywalker crashed the Star Destroyer with the Force to assist in Finn's escape, but that's his own X-Wing took on heavy damage from the Star Destroyer and crashed as well. This type of Force ability has been alluded to in a number of the Expanding Universe books, and also some video games. We haven't seen it actually in any of the films yet, but it's very possible. Luke has had 30 years, maybe, to hone his abilities. We don't know when the Force exactly went to sleep, or how much Luke was handicapped if the Force so-called went to sleep. That's certainly something that we'll have to wait till later. But that is my theory, is that Luke Force crashed it, and then took some damage, and then crashed nearby, and that's why the older version of the X-Wing is here crashed, and R2-D2 and Luke seem to be isolated. But Finn's own TIE fighter most likely also sustained damage, but he was able to escape much farther out to such a location that he could not see the Star Destroyer's crash site. However, he's clearly not out of the woods yet, and needs to get a change of clothes and get out of his armor. So he searches for and finds nearby civilization, acquires a new change of clothes, and obviously somehow meets up with Rey and BB8 at some point. But is eventually tracked down by the Empire, as we can see a TIE fighter in the left in the distance commencing the attack, forcing the new trio to run from the carnage. Kathleen Kennedy of Lucasfilms has promised us a strong female role model for younger female audiences, which appears to be Rey, and if she is that character, I really hope that she becomes a Jedi, because I'm already liking her character despite having not said a single line in the teasers thus far. I'm really liking how they're portraying her thus far in just this one teaser. But I really hope that she will not just be like Han and just the assistant who doesn't have any Force abilities, but she will actually be a full-fledged Jedi. I really want to see a strong female Jedi. We have not had that in any of the movies, and even in the books it was quite rare. But obviously I don't know. I don't know. It's just me. For some reason, I just always want to see a woman properly represented in whatever level of literature it is. Whether, of course, novels, TV shows, plays, film, and so forth. Which is why I don't really like the original series of Star Trek, because all the women there are just sex objects. And right about now, some of you are probably complaining about how I have been talking all this time about Finn and never once congratulated Lucasfilms on casting a major role to an African American. Well, that's simply because casting isn't the same as writing. George Lucas could have given the role of Han Solo to any white, black, Latino, Asian, Pacifican, or Native American, and the role would have been written exactly the same way. But if you made Han Solo a woman, then you will tend to change things on how the character is written, simply because men and women act and react in different ways, neither better nor weaker, just different. Like a designer and an engineer will each make a spoon, the designer will go with form over function, while the engineer will focus on function over form. We still get a spoon in either case, just a different kind of spoon, thereby making it more of a challenge for a community which is primarily male writers. Most writing staffs are male, and even the staffs that have a significant amount of females, typically they're over half male. I know J.J. Abrams did indeed write some of the script and some of the story, and George Lucas did indeed write a story treatment. I don't know how much Disney took from that, but it's been shown to be pretty difficult for men to properly portray a woman's responses and convictions and how she would act in any given situation. But at the same token, there apparently aren't that many female writers in Hollywood. So if any of you ladies out there thinking of a career in screenwriting, better get started. But enough about sociology, let's continue with the analysis. BB8 is a technological marvel, even for 2015. I still don't get how in the world this thing works. No, it's not CGI. Mark Hamill actually said in an interview several months ago that the robot is as real as R2-D2, and Hamill himself even got to drive the robot around for a bit on set. And they also brought him out for the Star Wars celebration obviously you could say, well, that's just a mock-up and for publicity. And like, no. What they actually used on set is a real functioning robot that actually works that way. So it's amazing. I really want to know how this thing works. From the movie side, the story side, I'm not sure if BB8 starts out like R2-D2 and pretty much on his own mission, like R2 was in A New Hope, and then just meets up with, I guess, Rey and Finn, or if Rey owns him outright. I guess that information will just have to come later. This shot is interesting because, again, we are clearly inside the Millennium Falcon with a ladder in the back leading to the quad laser cannons as seen in A New Hope. So why BB-8 is peeking around the corner in what should be a safe environment is a very good question, but one that we will have to wait for. But now that we've covered all our heroes, let's talk about the bad guys. As we can see, in the more immortal words of Monty Python, the Emperor's not quite dead, and is shown by this display to be feeling much better. We have an Imperial outpost, or fortress, in an area of snow-covered mountains, featuring a brand new design to the Imperial emblem on the red drapes. On the platform we see a lot of what appear to be black, cloaked individuals. These could simply be Imperial officers, or maybe a new Sith Order led by Kylo Ren. Or even a cult formed in the memory of Darth Vader or Emperor Palpatine. Obviously, we don't know. Either way, this is a very interesting feature, and I'm surprised I spotted it. Hopefully, you find this interesting yourself. But as I mentioned, the big baddie is, of course, Kylo Ren. Rumors have been circulating about him being a fanatic about Sith lore and all things Sith, which would explain why Vader's mask appears in the teaser and, by extension, the movie at all, and why this mask definitely resembles Darth Revan's from Knights of the Old Republic and the Old Republic video games. Now, will Disney actually support Darth Revan crossing over into the new canon? I don't know, but I definitely hope that they bring in at least the character, not necessarily everything about him in the video games, but at least keep him as a character, a part of the lore in the distant past of the Sith and the Jedi, because ever since I played the Knights of the Old Republic, he has basically been my favorite Sith Lord. He's just such an amazing character. And even Disney obviously has to admit that his mask, Revan's mask, is just way too cool not to at least copy off of. As we see Kylo Ren sporting a very, very nice Revan-inspired mask. But this is definitely Kylo Ren, for those who might be questioning if it was the same guy who had the lightsaber, because in an earlier shot we can... Well, in this one we actually can see just the slight sliver of the lightsaber's handguard. If you can call it a handguard, really. But in an early shot where he slices downward at the camera, if you slow it down to the frame by frame, you can clearly see both the full-on lightsaber handguard and this mask. So this is definitely Kylo Ren, no question about that. We see here that apparently Ren and his stormtroopers have taken some prisoners, possibly on Jakku. It might be as part of the pursuit of Finn, or for some other reason, or again, might not be Jakku, might be somewhere else. Not much information, but interesting that obviously, unless you do this frame by frame, you don't see any of these prisoners at all. You just don't. He turns away too quickly. I'm just going to call this trooper the Imperial Enforcer or Imperial Hunter, who is seemingly taking over the storytelling role of the Fett family, Jango and Boba Fett, as the bounty hunter / assassin in the story. He or she may even be a Mandalorian for all I know. Obviously, there's really nothing more outside of that to go on as to who the character is and what exact role that they play. Obviously, they're working for the Empire. They're part of the Empire. They're in a specialized Imperial uniform, so they're not a standard stormtrooper. They're obviously a specialized soldier, I guess you could say. But we can't say one way or the other who or what it is, as far as in the storyline. The background, however, is very interesting, as we've only seen these set pieces, particularly those lights. We've only seen them on the set pieces of the Death Star, both Death Stars in New Hope and Return of the Jedi. So I'm obviously wondering what this is all about. Why those particular Death Star set pieces? Well, that concludes my analysis. Hopefully I pointed out a few things that have been overlooked by others. I have heard some people question Luke's narration of "my father has it" in reference to the Force instead of saying "my father had it." But one, I think this is just hearkening back and paying homage to the monologue, to his monologue in Return of the Jedi. And two, Anakin is one with the Force now anyway. He is a Force ghost. So he's technically ever present, as is Yoda, as is Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm not really seeing anything bizarre about this, and no reference "oh, Darth Vader is coming back." I highly doubt that if Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams and Disney have any brains in their department, they will not bring Darth Vader back. Yes, I love him. He is such a great character as Darth Vader and such an awesome villain. But he is dead. Let him be dead. Let him stay dead. Let him stay redeemed as Anakin Skywalker and actually bringing balance to the Force and destroying the Sith. Let's leave him dead. But that's all I have for today. Let me know what you think or what you thought in the comments. Any theories you might have, anything that I might have missed, whether you agree or disagree with my speculations. Just please no trolling or spamming, or I will remove you. But thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.